All right, these are some problems in section 8.5, and they're a little bit earlier on than the harder ones that I have recorded on separate videos. So let me start with a quick one. Number one is the simplest type. You have a slope of 2, and you have a y-intercept of 5. Well, that one's really nice because it lets us plug straight into our slope-intercept form equation. That's y equal mx plus b, and again, that's the slope-intercept form. You really need to know these forms because they're in all the directions, so you kind of got to know, which is which, right? You'll hear in the other videos some things about standard form if you don't remember them. All right, so my slope is my m, and my y-intercept is always my b, so all I got to do is plug them in. Slope of 2, y-intercept of 5, that's my b. Ta-da, I'm done. That's the fastest one there, right? That easy, that long. Sometimes they're going to give you, such as in number 11, something like the slope is a half, and the y-intercept, no, they don't give you the y-intercept. They tell you it passes through 4, that didn't take, did it? 4, that's a positive 4, so I'm going to make a really thick parentheses to cover up that mark, negative 1. Okay, so what I can do here is write the equation that I know down and see what I can figure out from there. I know I have the slope right here, so that's just going to get plugged in for m. So right now I know that I have 1/2 there. Now, I'm missing a y, I'm missing an x, and I'm missing a b. Actually, in my final equation, I want the y and the x to stay, but what am I to do here? I've got too many things missing, and I can't find them all. Well, they did give me another piece of information, so let's go look at it, and that's what you should always do. Look at all the pieces of information they give you and see. Most of the time, you're going to need all of it. All right, so over here, I would say 99% of the time you're going to need all of it. Over here, they gave me a point, and if I think about it, isn't this an x and isn't this a y? So here's the plan. What we're going to do is go plug in the x over here and the y over here in the equation, just temporarily. I'm not going to leave them because I want to be able to plug other x's and y's in, but I've got this little dilemma, and this is how I can get out of it. If I realize that I have an x and a y over here, my x is 4, I'll plug it in here. My y is negative 1, I'll plug it in here. That just leaves me with the missing thing. And what do you know? The missing thing is exactly what I need to be able to write my equation. So I'm going to find the y-intercept here by plugging all this in, okay? I'll solve for b, and then in a minute I'll go back and I'll keep my x and my y. I'll keep my slope because that is the correct slope, but I'll just fill in this space right here that I'll just underline for now, which is the b part. Okay, so let's simplify first. Negative 1 equal, okay, well, 1/2 of 4 is 2 plus b. And if I want to know what b is, all I have to do is get it by itself. That's what solving does for us. It allows us to find out missing things. I'll subtract 2 from each side, and my b is a negative 3. Oh, that's exactly what I needed over here. And since it's a negative 3, I could put plus negative 3. But what I tend to do is realize that adding a negative is the same thing as subtraction. That's how we define subtraction. And I'll just put it in and we're done. And that's what you have to do on most of these problems, though they give you varying amount of information in this section 8.5. All right, I'm trying to do one of each of the easier types, though I know these may not be easy for you because you're just learning them, but they get harder towards the end. So in this section, here's another type of problem they give me, and there's a lot of them. They're in the A section, 17 through 28. 23 is 3, negative 1, and 6, 7. Now, I'm going, oh no, I don't have the slope because I need y equal mx plus b to get this equation because it's the only one I know that I can use now. Okay, and I would have it if I just had the slope and the y-intercept because I want the x and the y to stay in the equation so I can plug new numbers in and maybe plug an x in and find the y that goes with it. That would help me find another point on this line. Well, what I can do is I can find the slope. The slope is, there's a formula for it. The m equal, subtract the y's on top of an equation, and subtract the x's on the bottom of the equation. That's literally what the formula tells me to do. Now, I've shown y'all a quick way to do it, but a lot of you still prefer to label, and I understand that. I did too when I was learning this. So I'm going to go, ooh, you know what? I like these big numbers in the second point. I want to start my subtraction there. So if you look, the one they label y2, x2, that's where we start our subtraction. So I'm going to label that x of the second point because I'm going to call that my second point, and y of my second point. The little, you pronounce that x sub 2, y sub 2, and it's just saying this is my second point that I have, and that's the x of that point and the y of that point. And so I'm going to call the first point the first point. So my first point, I could label this x sub 1 and y sub 1, meaning x of point 1 and y of point 1. Okay, I just have to plug this stuff in. Now I want to remember that I've got a subtraction sign in my slope formula. Really, you don't have to put parentheses around the first term so much, but it's kind of nice at least to put it around the second term that comes after the subtraction sign, because people will put the subtraction sign and then they'll just go stick a number in there thinking that's the negative off their number, but that's not the case. So let's fill this in, and I will fill in with red just so we can see what I'm filling in. Now y2 goes in the first one, so that's 7. Y1, it goes in the second blank, and that is a negative 1. Notice I have two negatives together. That's what happens when I plug in a negative number because of the subtraction sign. Well, 7 minus 1 becomes 7 plus 1, and that's going to be 8, isn't it? I'll just go ahead and do that. Now on the bottom it says take x2 and stick it in the first slot. Okay, that's 6. Got my subtraction sign down. x1 is 3. Notice I put the parentheses and the subtraction sign before I plugged in, so I'm trying to be careful not to miss any negatives that I plug in and let that mess me up, because that is the number one problem when people find slope. As a teacher, when you've taught this for about 12 years, you just see that consistent pattern over the years. So I'm just trying to keep you from making it if you'll take the advice here. 6 minus 3 is 3. So my slope is 8/3. Okay, good. I'm going to kind of keep up with my equation over here. I have y equal, my slope here, my m is 8/3. It's way over here now. And I've got an x, but I don't have my b, so I need to find my b. So let me come over here. What am I going to do? Well, I'm going to rewrite that formula again. Notice I write the formula an awful lot, don't I? That's because it keeps me on track. And I mean, I could do it without it, honestly, but I'm trying to show you techniques for doing this. I'm not just writing extra stuff to write extra stuff. I'm trying to model for you how successful students learn this. Okay, I know the slope is 8/3. Found that out. Now, the problem is I got 3 things missing. What am I to do? Well, let's look at the information they gave me. They gave me 2 points. Could I find a b, a y, or an x or something up there? Well, sure I could. There's all kinds of stuff up there. I'm going to pick one of the points and plug it in for x and y temporarily, because remember, my real answer is going to be over here. But I'm missing the b, and if I could put in an x and a y in over on this new equation that I'm starting over here, the only thing that would be missing is b, and I could solve for it then, and that's how I'm going to get it. Okay, now I can pick either point. I'm going to show you a smart way to go here. I notice that I have 8/3 as my slope, and I'm going to plug in the x right beside it, right? If I pick either one of these points is going to be a nice point to plug in. I like small numbers, though. I don't know about you guys, but I like small numbers. So I'm going to go with a smaller number. I notice that if the x that's going to be there is either 3, and if I put a 3 there, that's going to be able to make that 3 in the slope cancel out with it. If I put a 6 in there, it's still going to cancel out. So either point is going to make the math not so messy. I'm just going to choose the first one. I'm going to choose 3, -1. So the x in that point is 3, and the y in that point is -1. There's an equal sign there. Okay, and then I got to find b. So I'm going to solve for b. Remember, circling something when you're solving for it helps your brain recognize that that's what you want to look at. You're not looking at the other side so much. You're just looking at this to make your decisions. All right, before I start moving anything around and solving for b, let me clean it up a little bit, because I see once I plug it in that these 3's are going to cancel out, making my life much more pleasant, because I'm just left with 8 plus b. Oh, yay, no fractions. That's why I wanted to make sure I had something divisible by 3 in that x font. Sometimes I can't help it. I don't get it, but here I did. All right, if I want to solve for b, I just need to get the 8 away from it. That is a positive 8. I could just as easily write that as b plus 8. If you need to do that because it helps you, don't be afraid to do that. You may have more steps on your paper than somebody else, but what does it matter if you get the problem right? All right, so there's the b. If I want to get rid of the 8, I'll subtract it from both sides, and I get -1 plus -8 is -9. Oh, that's my b, -9. Ta-da! I'm done. Because that's what I was missing over here. I needed y equal mx plus b, so I could put plus -9, but in math, isn't subtraction defined as adding a negative? So what you would see in the answer key, if you're checking it, is 8/3 x minus 9. And that's your answer. All right, I may not have time to finish this problem, but I can at least help you get it started. This is number 29, and if you were absent and you don't know what to do, I can at least get you going here. All right, this problem looks a little weird, but we have to remember, if I can write these two things as points, I can treat it just like I did the problems up in 23 or, something like that up in that other section. So I'm going to write them as points. As a matter of fact, I always want you to write your y-intercept and your x-intercept as points if I ask you to state them on the paper, because it's just good habit and helps you understand how to get the point written down. If this is a y-intercept, it's where a graph crosses the y-axis. So any point that you have on the y-intercept is right here, and if you think about, it's on the y-axis here. So that point right there, the x would be 0, and then you'd have whatever you colored in, which is -2 in this case. Another way to remember it is to find a y-intercept, you set the opposite variable equal to 0 on any intercepts. You set the opposite variable equal to 0. So I'm finding my y-intercept. I'm going to set x equal to 0. And I write it down here, like right here, then I'm putting all the little dots. I put it there because I set it equal to 0 if I'm saying this is the y-intercept, and it's telling you where it crosses the y is -2, so you put that -2 in the y space. Similarly, for the x-intercept, if it's an x-intercept, here's my x, here's my y, right? I'm going to set, if it's an x-intercept, I set the opposite variable equal to 0, so I set y equals 0 for the x-intercept, and it's telling me that x is 5 here is what it's telling me. So those are the 2 points I want to use. I'll try to quickly get through as much of this as I can, but when I notice that I'm going to go over on my video, then I have to go edit it, and it just takes a long time, so I'll stop pretty quickly once I see that's happening. All right, so I can find the slope. I can say, I'm just going to say this is my point 1, and so this is x of point 1, and this is y of point 1, and I'll call this point 2, so this is x of point 2 and y of point 2. So if I want to use the formula, remember I showed you a faster way to do it, but I'm just going to use the formula here because a lot of people probably would rather use the formula from what I noticed in class. I get, remember when I do this, I'm going to put my subtraction sign, and I'm going to at least put a parentheses here so I'll make sure I've plugged in the right thing. y2